Good morning and welcome to Agriculture Day in Canada. Maybe around the world, I'm not sure. But my good friend and mentor, Orion Samuelson, together with Max Armstrong, two of the guys that influenced me probably the most when it came to farm broadcasting. Orion once told me, if you eat, you are involved in agriculture. Don't forget that. Yes, we have all the cliches about how the milk comes from the grocery store and how this and how that. But at the same time, agriculture is so important. I'm not going to spew a whole bunch of statistics and those kinds of things. You can get them elsewhere in the print media. But one statistic at least, and maybe more, about what? 1.5% of Canadians and Americans, maybe a little bit more in the US, produce our food. 1.5% of the population produce the food in the world. Yes, there are countries where that number goes higher because many of them exist off the land. You take China, for instance, so many people, and that's why they had such a huge problem with the African swine fever, because they had so many homes, even in the cities and towns, where they raised pigs, and those pigs would go in and out of the house. And I'm not here to disparage or talk bad about that. That's just the way it is. So, agriculture, number one, is produced by just a handful compared to the rest of us people. Number two, I have for 49 years been an advocate of farmers around the world. I've had the privilege of visiting and interviewing farmers in England, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, to name a few countries in Europe. Also across this great country, but not further east than Ontario. Hopefully one day I can go further east. Across the United States, interviewed many farmers in Mexico, even in Hawaii. Yes, and then of course 2015 in South America, more specifically the Chaco. And my good friend Elmer Kaler and his wife Nettie, who hosted us for a weekend so graciously, picked us up from Asuncion, farms significantly in the Chaco, in the Mano colony. Yes, farming is so important. Let's never, never forget it. When we look at what happened in 2019, I remember the comments by Gilles from, or Gilbert Sabarin, sorry. Gilles is his dad. Gilbert Sabarin, St. Jean. St. Jean farm days in the early part of January told me for 2 summers, 2 springs, going back 2018, 2019, guess what? They basically planted into the dust. Then along comes the rain of August, September. Then we have the snow, Thanksgiving weekend. Yes, it really made things difficult. But yesterday I spoke with Dennis Lang, and I'll have that interview also up and running here in the next while. Dennis Lang is the pulse crop specialist with Manitoba Agriculture. In fact, he goes by the handle Dennis Bean Lang because I think Dennis, and I don't know if he's forgot anything at all, but may well have forgotten more about the production of beans and peas and edibles, soybeans and so forth, than most of us know put together. Thank you, Dennis, for being there when I need you to tell the story of agriculture, and more specifically the story of beans. Yes, we have so many things. We have so many attacks, and that's the other part of this podcast. We have so many attacks, first of all, on agriculture in general. We've seen so much. We have people attacking farmers and coming on their farms and protesting, so to speak, and basically making things difficult for those who produce the foods. You know, we need to also take our hats off to farmers because they are the best environmentalists this world has ever known. Why? Because they live off the land. Yes, we have our prime minister wanting to tax the daylights out of agriculture, and he probably will. But somehow our farmers are going to survive net profits to make it happen. Yes, he wants to carbon tax us, and yet he knows nothing about the environment and what it means to live off the land compared to what our farmers know. So we have the attacks on agriculture, and it's good to point that out whenever we can. And then, of course, we have the attacks on animal agriculture indirectly. Yes, there are those who are promoting the protein, plant-based, non-meat burgers, and hats off to those who do that in a proper way, in selling more product that farmers grow, making it more available to other people. But telling us that you're making burgers, meatless burgers, is a misnomer, to say the least. So that's an attack, I feel, on animal agriculture. There are those that would love to stop every hog farm, every cattle farm, every dairy in this country, even in the Hollywood, in the latest show of awards, the Oscars, talking about how sad it is when a cow gives birth to a calf so that we can have our milk. And yet those people think nothing of snuffing the life of a baby that's still in the womb of its mother. 42 million abortions estimated around the entire world in 2019. And they're standing up there crying because the cow has to sacrifice so much to give us the milk. I'll never forget how someone once told me about the sacrifice between the chicken and the pig. And the cow, too. The cow says, yes, I'm giving all this milk so people can drink it and be healthy. The chicken says, yes, I'm laying the eggs so that everybody can have eggs for breakfast who wants it. And then along comes Mr. Pig. He says, oh, you guys, I give the ultimate sacrifice when they put the bacon on the plate. Yes, agriculture is so vital. It's so important. And the attacks that we're seeing, whether it's carbon tax, whether it's protesting on a turkey farm in Alberta, whether it's complaining about this and complaining about that, so many of the complaints, probably most of them, at least in North America, come from people with full mouths and full stomachs. Why? Because of the 1.5% of the farmers that put that food on their table. So, in one hand, they would like to kill the right hand with the left hand because the right hand feeds them, but they don't like the way some of those farmers do it. Well, I just wanted to tell you how important farmers are. Number two, how important it is to celebrate Agriculture Day. Not just because of hurrahing and so forth, no, but getting right down to the nitty-gritty, because I've been there. I farmed with my father and my brother Jack. I farmed when I was, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I went to a country school, Grossweide. My dad was, for many years, the chairman of the board. Yes, even with only grade 5 education, he could manage the finances of that school board in addition to the things that happen on our farm. No, I don't belittle Mr. Jim Schrader, Mr. Diedrich Schrader, Mr. Diedrich Dick, Mr. Klippenstein, and whoever else, Mr. Abram Dick, Jim Dick's father, all of them at one point, Mr. Letkeman, were on that school board, and I could go back and back. But that particular school, just a mile east as the crow flies from where I grew up, even my mother attended that school. So, yes, Dad would pick me up as a youngster, maybe 8 or 9, 10 years old. He would pick me up at school. He'd be waiting at 5 minutes to 4, so that as I broke out that door, and he told me in the morning, Harry, I'm going to pick you up, and you're going to harrow the fields that I planted during the day. 8-section harrow, Ford tractor. Wow, that was farming in a big, big way. As I've always said, Dad already in 1960 farmed 1,000 acres of cultivated land, a select seed grower way back to the late 40s, I believe. I remember from the early 50s. And yep, we celebrate agriculture, not because of the packaged goods, but that too, but because of the farmers that continue to provide us right here in Canada, the United States, and around the world, in most cases, the healthiest, the safest, and most nutritional food that money can buy. That's Harry Siemens for Siemens Says and Agriculture Day. Somewhere, sometime, somehow, I will see you again.